Hi friends, welcome to the recap of Miss USA 2025. My name is Dani Walker, and before we get into it, I have to give a huge thanks to everybody who has been sharing the episodes and watching the channel, and especially to my super thanks contributors. A lot of you know that my camera broke, and so we're kind of just making things work right now, and we almost have enough to purchase a new camera. So thank you so much to Ismail, Carrie, Carol, Gerald, and Raylene for your contributions. And I may have missed somebody between the time that I recorded this episode and when it's published, but I appreciate you so much, and you're literally making the channel possible for everyone. So I appreciate you. Now for this year's recap, I am keeping in mind the new leadership only had a few weeks to create this show. So with such a short time frame, I'm actually very impressed at what they were able to accomplish, even considering that they were able to appoint 16 title holders for the teen and miss division for those states that didn't have representatives. They even funded the outgoing title holders from 2024 who didn't have a pageant to bring them to Reno if they wanted to crown their successor. So that was pretty incredible. There were just so many things that they were able to put together. I think because of their combined experience and connections in pageantry, we were still able to have gown sponsors, fitness wear sponsors, and then of course sponsors that are supporting Miss USA as she goes to Miss Universe literally right now. So let me give you thoughts on the show. First and foremost, I did not even know that you could hear backstage at the beginning of the show. I didn't have my phone because I was getting ready to do commentary for the show. And it actually gave me an idea, because if you guys remember the old Victoria's Secret fashion shows, they would open with all of this like chaos and the models getting dressed and running on stage. And you would actually be able to hear what production was saying to the angels. And I was like, wait, why don't they do a Miss USA year like that? Like an opening, like a Victoria's Secret opening, because Victoria's Secret's so iconic and their runway show is back. So I actually think that could be a cool idea for the future. So first, I thought that the custom Jonathan Kane jumpsuits that they wore were so pretty. I feel like you couldn't appreciate them because if you saw them up close and in the light, they had this really cool like liquid sheen to them. They were actually awesome. But since they wore black, I was like, why is the background dark blue and then mainly black? I feel like they needed a brighter color behind the contestants because you couldn't really also appreciate the opening dance number. Oh my gosh. Okay, so when I was sitting there in the live audience, the audience was going wild, crazy. It was so much fun to watch it live. They were fabulous. And I have to say, in my opinion, Wisconsin in that dance number was like the star of the show. And I found out she's not even a professional dancer. I told her she needs to go audition for Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. She needs to be on that show. She's so fabulous. I was literally blown away. But they looked fabulous. And then I also didn't even know until I was watching it live that they shot all those clips of the contestants in the casino. And I thought those were really cute, fun clips. But what you didn't see is that during the show, they played those on the screens. And then on that back portion of the stage where you saw the contestants entering at the top of the stairs, during the live show, the ladies would all walk across and they would do a pose when their title was being announced, and then they would walk off. And I was like, oh, I wish they would have somehow been able to get some of those shots in the telecast. I think that would have been really cool. Also, on a personal note, I was just really excited that Olivia Jordan hosted. We've been at shows together in the past and DM'd each other, but our paths just have not crossed. And so one day I walked into rehearsal and there's Olivia Jordan. And I was like, I was so excited. She was so sweet. And then she's like, have you ever done that one TikTok dance? I was like, what? I've never done any TikTok dances. And so we did a TikTok together. My first ever TikTok dance was with Olivia Jordan, and I felt like it was pretty iconic. I was pretty excited about that. So kind of the same note that I had for my teens, when these women started speaking for the top 20, you could really see who was prepared. And let me just say, most of them were. I was shocked. We were having so much fun just listening to their responses for the top 20. It was so enjoyable. They were hilarious and they had personality. It kind of felt like Trump era when answers didn't feel as rehearsed. Like they felt like very fun and lively and spontaneous. And obviously we know for these competitions nowadays, there's so much prep that goes into it. You're really not going to go into these situations blind. But the way that these women were able to deliver for the top 20 little hosting interviews was fabulous, and I enjoyed it so much. As most of you know, I was able to offer some live commentary for this show with Andrea, who was Miss New York USA 2020, and then of course Noelia, Miss USA 2023, and we just had so much fun. But I will give you behind the scenes more so in the vlog, but I will tell you this. So they wanted us on the red carpet before the show. We took some photos, we ran backstage. We only had about 10 minutes before show, and they did not give us the top 20, although we asked if we could have it so that we can create some notes. So in about 10 minutes before the top of the show, we saw the top 20 and we started making those notes for our commentary. And then of course we would adjust those notes like as certain contestants were being cut. The other thing we decided right before the show was who was going to open and close each segment so that none of us were talking over each other. So basically it was like Andrea, Noelia, me, Andrea, Noelia, me, and we just rotated that throughout the show. So they cut to a top 20, and I'm so glad that we had a 20 because there were honestly so many strong contestants, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the performances that I have thoughts on. First of all, Alabama, I was so glad that she placed. She was just such a standout at prelims, but there were a lot of strong contestants, and I was worried she would get looked over, and she didn't. So loved her during swim, very consistent performer, and she also, not that long ago, won Miss Collegiate America, so you may recognize her from that competition. Also for swim, I think that the lava panels were fine on the side, but I really wish we had more of a solid color in the center of the stage because I feel like the contestants would have popped more, especially in those really cute swimsuits. I loved their swimsuits. Why couldn't we have super cute swimsuits my year? I don't know. Now we have Florida, no surprise here for a top 20. Honestly, loved her performance. She was super, super precise. I also thought her hair was perfect for finals. Oh my gosh, I loved it. She had that lovely like blowout look. The hair moved. It wasn't too stiff. She was fabulous. Oh my gosh, Georgia's swimsuit performance, hot. Oh my gosh. She was giving me Miss Universe. Honestly, when I saw this, I was obsessed with this performance. Nothing I would have changed. Louisiana, I've talked about this before. She had competed in the Grand system, and honestly, I want to see her back in Grand. I just feel like her performances are so well suited for Grand. Like, this was great, loved her, but we need to see her back at Grand. Maine was so stunning. I really, really wish that this routine had been a little bit more precise, but I have to say, like, when you see her live during the show, she is one of those contestants where you're just like, oh my gosh, wow. Like, she has so much presence, but it was such a tough year, and that presence was not able to carry her to the next round, but still gorgeous. Would love to see her compete somewhere else. Nebraska, absolutely gorgeous. First of all, the hair was perfect, like not a hair out of place. The body, oh my goodness, so fit. And honestly, it was very satisfying because I talked about her in my other episodes and I was like, y'all better watch out for Nebraska. And I felt like people weren't really listening and you would never really hear about her in the comments. And so when she went, I literally even told one of the photographers for the show, I was like, you need to watch out for Nebraska. And then she saw her competing during prelims and she was like, wait a second. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. I see it on stage and I'm like, you see what I mean? You see what I mean? So then when she placed for finals, I was like, oh, obviously. Nevada, our hometown girl. Oh my gosh, the crowd went wild for her. Fabulous performance. She was so beautiful. I got to speak to her a little bit as well. She's a former NAM girl. I love that. I absolutely love that. She was such a sweetheart. And this performance for sure was taking her to the 10. New Jersey, oh my gosh. I talked about her. I talked about how I loved her style leading up to the competition, loved all of her wardrobe, such a great competitor, super sweet, very, very humble. And let me just say, like, her skin is poreless. Like, how? Oh my gosh, the body. She's a former D1 athlete. Yeah, I can see that. Great. And she had such great little moments, hair flips, facial expressions. Loved her. Oklahoma, beautiful. First of all, I have to say that. Second of all, I think the hair was a little bit too big. It felt kind of grand for me versus USA. I wish it was just like softer for her, but still a great performance. Oregon always shines. I told people after prelims that she was in my top 5 and some people were like, really? And I was like, yeah, just wait for it. The way that she times her facial expressions and like creates moments and the crowd goes wild, like it was fabulous. And she's super, super tall, super fit. And then Texas, oh my gosh, her face. Another contestant, absolutely poreless. I was with her in the hair and makeup room before the show. I was like just staring at her face like, wow, you are stunning. I literally can't even emphasize it enough how gorgeous she is. You just gotta see her in person, but wow. She did a phenomenal job here though, and she was kind of giving me like Crystal Stewart era beauty, just oh my gosh, stunning. But also had a fabulous walk, excellent job with all of her poses. She knows all of her angles. It was great. So now we cut to a top 10 for gown. Going from 20 to 10, very, very difficult. But in my opinion, the ladies that I could see in a 5 still made that cut. So I wasn't super surprised by 10. It had to be done. We had to narrow it down. So we have Alabama, same gown as prelims. I wish she didn't have the corset in the back, but it was such a really, really great gown with the draped beading on her arms. It was wonderful, but she did need to have more of that just like moment that made her stand out in the group, because I knew some of these ladies were going to bring something just outside of the box and phenomenal. So, and that's what I feel like happened. Florida, oh my goodness. So when I saw this gown, well, I knew that she was going to do something different for finals, because during prelim, she wore a gown that the last time she wore that gown, she was first runner up. That was her gown that she wore the year before this year. And so I was like, I saw that and I was like, if she's repeating a gown, she's got to have a new one. And when I saw this gown, I just thought that it looked like the combination of a pageant gown and a cheer uniform. It was like the marriage of those two things. And when I saw it, I couldn't get past that distracting part of it. And so from that moment, I was like, I don't think that she's going to make that cut into the 5. Although I think that maybe if she had wore the gown she won in at state, that could have helped her advance. Georgia, the audience and myself gasped. She did such a great job with the whole performance with this kind of galaxy universe inspired gown. So I will say one of my favorite universe style gowns, we could call them, was worn by Miss Universe Mexico 2024. And that gown and the fabric was just so well done. It looked hyper realistic. It was just really, really beautiful. And I've seen a lot of gowns like it afterwards, but Georgia's take on this gown, or her designer's take on this gown, was one of the best that I have seen since that initial one that Mexico wore. So I loved it. You could just feel the crowd loving her in that moment. And so when she didn't make it to a 5, shock. I need some answers and explanations. I have no idea. No clue what happened. But I'm guessing maybe it had to do something with interview then. Nebraska. She had a very simple gown, same one that she wore to prelims. And honestly, it ended up making her stand out because everybody went like big over the top rhinestones and she was super simple. Kind of reminded me of Nia Sanchez, who went like the opposite her year as well, also wearing red. So what I liked about Nebraska is she really, really focused on all of her facial expression changes and creating lovely moments. She took her time. She had no problem with the stares. And I will say, I'm not sure if it was really came across in the telecast as well, but there was this moment as she was exiting where she took all of her hair and she swept it around like as she's walking off, and the audience loved it. They loved it. And it was a moment that I feel like just didn't really get felt on the telecast. Nevada, yes. Okay, I knew that she was coming in strong. I knew she was gonna wear something fabulous. I believe she also wore Albany's Texas gown for prelims. I know that she wore Gabriella Eastler's farewell gown from Miss Universe to watch prelims, which was like one of my favorite Miss Universes. You wore her gown. And so we knew she was gonna really bring something big and fabulous. And I really think that she did that. This gown though, it does remind me a lot of similar styles that we've been seeing at Miss World for the past 2 years. You know, that white, bright capes, feathers, all of that, it kind of brought that. But she brought an amazing performance with this. She was fabulous. New Jersey, same gown from prelims to finals, also similar silhouette as we saw her win her state pageant in. And I talked about this, I've mentioned it in other episodes, where a lot of powerhouse countries, what they will do to kind of like create their winning formula is they will have a carryover style. So if their winner won, let's say, for example, New Jersey in a specific silhouette, they will put her in that same silhouette in a different color for nationals. And that's what we saw with New Jersey. We also might see that done with color. So if somebody wins in a specific color at nationals, then they go on to internationals in the same color, but totally different gown style. And we've seen this be very, very, very effective for a lot of powerhouse countries. So it was a really good strategy. This gown was absolutely beautiful. And I just feel like she was really bringing a lot in this performance, a lot of interesting facial expression changes, and just great confidence and energy. I think Oklahoma's gown style was absolutely fabulous. However, I was not on board for the yellow shade. I think the yellow was great, but on stage with the red tones in her hair and then the bright yellow, I just think this exact gown in a bright teal on her with her eyes, that would have really taken it to the next level. Oregon, fabulous in this gown. Also a very universe inspired gown, kind of looked like stars spread out all over it. Gown was a little bit short on her, and I feel like she was kind of overcompensating, and maybe it was bringing down her posture slightly. I just wanted to see a little bit more open shoulders here, but loved her. It's in her eyes. It's in her eyes, and the crowd was loving her too. And when I saw this, I was like, top 5, straight to the top 5. Texas, same prelim gown. This gown is by Gianni Strazia, which didn't surprise me, kind of reminded me of that. It also gave me Shandy Finney Miss Universe vibes with that sort of just like waterfall scalloped look on the dress. Now, I think this dress could have been even better if it had more of a corset, or even if we didn't use the pearls and the stones to give her more of an accentuated waist. But even if he were to use just the seam lines to accentuate the waist even more, I think that would have been fabulous. But really, really cool gown, very unique, and I love that the nude actually matched her skin tone. It was beautiful, she was elegant, and once again, just serving face. So let's talk our top 5 and their answers, beginning with Nebraska. Her question was, when people look back on our generation 100 years from now, what do you hope they say about us, and what are you doing to help that happen? So she says that our generation is adaptable. She talked about how she teaches athletes to stay safe online. And she says that being Miss USA requires you to be adaptable and also to lead the nation with pride. I just want to say too, her voice is so cute, so cute. I've shared more about her in my YouTube shorts recently. You could hear her voice, absolutely adorable. So she did a lot of key things here in this answer that I think people missed and overlooked because it's easy to get distracted by the fabulous gowns and all the beauty on stage. So she talked about her personal experience. She answered the question by saying adaptable. That's how she hopes people will remember us. And that example of her saying that she works with these athletes to do so and how like she could be adaptable as Miss USA, it kind of really answers that question, and we're able to learn a little bit more about her. And she answered this in a way I felt like it sounded very spontaneous. She sounded super relaxed, and I think it kind of helped her a little bit. Like a little nudge is when they were like, congratulations, and she was like so ready to go. They were like, hey, we're gonna start the questions. She was already standing there, and they were like, oh, okay, well, all right, Nebraska, I guess we really will get started. And then when they said congrats to her, she was like, oh, thank you so much for this. Thank you very much for this opportunity. The way that she did that was so kind and sincere. And those little itty bitty things that show more of who you are as a person and your personality can help to influence judges. So we have Oregon next. They asked her, artificial intelligence is changing how we live and work. In one sentence, what's the greatest ethical line you believe AI should never cross, and why? I love that she reacted to this. I love that she was like, oh, okay, one sentence? All right, because that's a very genuine answer. Again, personality is so important. Her answer essentially was, let the creatives be creative. She shared about being a business owner, having her own modeling agency, and she talked about the importance of the human element in creative arts and industries. She says that she thinks that we can use automation for things like vacuums or laundry, but aside from that, let the creatives be creative. Totally agree with her. I think that any creative field, it has a soul. It's art. You need to have that soul, and AI is just really never going to bring us this. But I just love how natural she was in this answer. Very, very likable, and just made some great points. And when I heard this answer, I was like, oh, maybe she'll be Miss USA. Nevada was asked, you wake up tomorrow and every social media platform is gone forever. What changes first in you, in society, and how we measure influence? That's too much. That's too much. Too many things to ask somebody on stage, and they only have a short amount of time to answer it. Now, she says she would love to have a more accepting society. She says that on social media, too often we compare ourselves. She says that things like our gender, who we worship, or how much hair you have on your head, like that nod to her alopecia, really shouldn't matter. And if we remove social media, that we will learn to live in the real world and be more accepting. So I feel like when I heard this answer, and even when I heard her answer in the top 20, the way that this came across in that live show was it sounded a bit rehearsed. I think watching it back and seeing the telecast, I was like, it actually translated better in the telecast than it came across in person, which was just interesting. It was a different feeling when you were actually there. I also feel like she could have been a little bit more direct with this, talking about what are the specific changes that she would see in herself, in society. And then also I felt like there was no even touch point of how this would affect how we measure influence. I would love to have heard her incorporate influence, especially because this is a pageant and Miss USA is quite an influential figure. So I feel like that part was a missed opportunity for her. Texas. If you could erase one barrier in the United States that keeps women from building lasting wealth, which barrier would you remove and how? She says accessibility. She talked about being a woman who works in sports and she believes that representation matters and it's so important. And she says it doesn't matter if you're the first one though, as long as you believe in your heart and you're more than halfway there in achieving your goals and dreams. So I thought this was pretty good. It was a safe answer and I understood the placement because of this. New Jersey, when they congratulated her, she talked about how she's looking forward to having the pizza that she mentioned earlier. And I loved it. So much personality there. But let's talk about her question. So she was asked, you have the undivided attention of every 15-year-old girl in the country for 60 seconds. What do you say? Her answer was, young lady, you are the architect of your identity. She talked about being a former D1 collegiate athlete. She coaches girls in basketball and lacrosse. She runs a workshop called Most MVP, which stands not for Most Valuable Player, but Most Valuable Pivot. She says, as your Miss USA, that her mission, motive, and movement would be to equip the next generation with the tools and the confidence that they need to go from their most valuable pivot and catapult them into their most valuable purpose. Let me just tell you, when we all heard that answer, it was such a mic drop moment in the audience. We were all so impressed. Like the crowd went wild. It was incredible. But I will say, while watching it back, I thought it was so great in person, but then hearing it on the telecast, it did sound slightly rehearsed. And you're gonna run that risk when you pre-prepare anything for a pageant. It's gotta be this risk you're willing to take. And so a lot of us were sitting there, we were like, okay, I can see New Jersey winning after this. Maybe it would be New Jersey and Oregon just because of the way that they were answering and the things that they said. But I will say, after watching all of this back, that I was like, oh, I can really see how the judges went with Nebraska, listening to their answers again. Because if you really, really listen to it, in her delivery, she sounds super spontaneous, super authentic, but she still was able to answer the question and she was able to share about herself. And those are kind of like these cornerstones of really powerful winning answers. And so I was like, okay, now I can see from the judge's perspective. Because honestly, in the venue, a lot of us, myself included, were like, I can see New Jersey winning this. But either way, things play out the way that they're supposed to in life. And I got to speak to New Jersey after the show and I was like, girl, this is just the beginning. Don't give up. Just keep going for those dreams, okay? Don't let this define you. Here were our final results. Nevada was 4th runner-up, which honestly I felt like she would have placed somewhere higher in there. She was just such a fan favorite and like that crowd was going crazy for her. I think that she did a good job overall. I think that her answer did hurt her in the placement. Then we have Texas, who was 3rd runner-up, which to me makes sense. Like I said, I think that the answer was pretty safe and these ladies delivered some phenomenal answers. So it's like you got to make some tough cuts. We had Oregon as 2nd runner-up and it's just tough. I felt the same way in the teen division. It was just difficult. Now we have our 1st runner-up, New Jersey, and of course our winner is Miss Nebraska USA. So congratulations to Miss Audrey on this great accomplishment. Super excited to see her move forward and compete in Thailand. Best luck to her and huge congrats to all of our contestants this year. Thank you, friends, though, for tuning in and be sure to stay here for lots more Miss Universe coverage.